Bismillahi walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, مَا كَانَ حَدِيثًا يُفْتَرَى. The Quran is not conjecture. The Quran is not a fantasy. The Quran is not a fabrication. The Quran is not fiction. وَلَكِنْ تَصْدِيقَ الَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. Rather, the Quran, it speaks about reality. It speaks about very real things. وَتَفْصِيلَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And the Quran creates a system and a structure within which people can find solutions to their circumstances and situations. وَهُدًى. And the Quran provides guidance, practical guidance. وَرَحْمَةً لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. And the Quran is a mercy, but for those who are willing to believe, those who will approach it with an open mind and an open heart. When we talk about the issues and the circumstances surrounding families and family dynamics, of course, it goes without saying, as we just heard elaborated as well, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us as human beings. A little tidbit about even the word that God used to refer to mankind and human beings, insan. There's this idea, there's this popular notion that the word insan comes from nisyan, which means forgetfulness. That's actually incorrect. The vast, overwhelming majority of the linguists, the lughawiyun, all are of the opinion and actually clarify that the word insan does not come from nasiya, to forget. The word insan and all its derivations, all of its derivatives, are derived from the root uns. And the word uns refers to sentimentality, an emotional connection and sentimentality. That human beings by definition are sentimental creatures. We are creatures that have emotional attachments. And so based off of that, it is completely built into our nature that we are going to need connections with other human beings. A human being, there's this very popular idea and notion that particularly became very predominant within the postmodern world about people being individuals and people being able to live life on their own. I don't want to need anyone. I want to be able to be completely self-sufficient. And that is completely unrealistic. Not needing anyone and being able to live life without any emotional attachments is, and not to throw this word around lightly, but that is actually some kind of dysfunction within the person. That is a disorder. That is a problem that needs addressing. As evidenced by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet of Allah, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the most complete human being that ever existed. He is the most perfect person to ever walk the face of this earth. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so profoundly, deeply, and emotionally connected to people within his life that some of the most beautiful moments of the life of the Prophet ﷺ are actually observable within his interactions with the people that were in his life. When the Prophet ﷺ is giving the khutbah on Friday, and his grandson Hassan radiallahu ta'ala anhu runs up to him and interrupts him during the khutbah, and the Prophet ﷺ scoops him up and picks him up. One of the great remembrances, adhkar, awrad, that we have within, one of the greatest spiritual rituals that we have within our religion and our tradition is known as the tasbih of Fatima. The tasbih of Fatima. Why is it called the tasbih of Fatima? Because the Prophet ﷺ went to go check on his daughter and see how she was doing. And when he saw her struggling, he taught her this tasbih to help give her strength and be able to recover from her daily tasks. It is a father imparting something beautiful to his daughter. And there are so many other moments that can be observed within the life of the Prophet ﷺ like this. So we are going to have these emotional attachments and we are going to need family. However, what I'd like to highlight and what I'd like to talk about is the topic, as the moderator mentioned, as sister mentioned, is about it takes a village. And that is addressing a reality. And I started off by referencing the Quran and how the Quran provides a framework of understanding, because there are not one but many examples in the Quran which highlight something very profound. Maryam salamun alayha. Maryam, the mother of Isa. Mary, mother of Jesus. Alayhim salam. This is the example of a young person, an amazing, a remarkable, a brilliant young person who actually does come from a quote unquote, like we talk about, a very functional, healthy household. Her mother is a pious woman of the highest caliber. Her father is a very righteous, responsible man. But we see that this young woman requires and tremendously benefits from the mentorship, the teaching, and the guidance provided to her by her uncle. And so we see there is someone outside of the home who is a part of the spiritual development and helping this person realize their full potential. Zakaria alayhi salam, وَكَفَّلَهَا Zakaria, played a profound role within her life. Our own Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it is no secret that the role that his uncle Abu Talib played within his life, from his childhood, through his teenage years, into his adulthood, and even when the Prophet ﷺ took on the greatest responsibility and challenge that any human being has ever been given, yes, there was a tragedy within the fact that his uncle did not personally accept the message. But it also doesn't change the fact that he was so instrumental and vital and helpful to the Prophet ﷺ in doing what he needed to do. That the Prophet ﷺ had someone like him that he could lean on, that he could rely upon. And we see that the Prophet ﷺ maintained that tradition and passed it on forward to others. Look at the role and the relationship the Prophet ﷺ has with Ali bin Abi Talib, who is his much, much, much younger cousin. And the Prophet ﷺ basically becomes a father figure and a mentor. Of course, he is the Prophet and the Messenger, but he is a mentor in his life even before prophethood, where Ali was raised within the home of the Prophet ﷺ. We see when that the Prophet ﷺ goes to Al-Madinatul Munawwarah, he arrives in Medina, and the mother, Sulaym, a real sincere mother, very emotionally comes to the Prophet ﷺ with her son Anas, who is 10 years old, this boy, and says that he does not have a father in his life. His father has passed. And I want him to be able to learn from you and benefit from you. The Prophet ﷺ takes on Anas as a younger brother, as one of his own children, as a little brother, and takes him on. And Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu stays with the Prophet ﷺ for 10 years. Lock and step. Being able to benefit from his love and his instruction and his guidance for 10 years. To make him who he would become. Where Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu is one of the handful, literally handful of the companions who is the most responsible for passing the tradition on to the following generation. Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu was one of the greatest teachers of the next generation of Muslims. And we see that that is made possible by the mentorship, the guidance that is provided to him by someone who is not even related to him. And this is the vision of the Prophet ﷺ in crafting a community. Every single person will need a community to belong to. And I go back to the earlier point that just as human beings require emotional connections, that is in the realm of family, but it is also in the realm of community. And I want to add one little wrinkle to this, one little added layer to this. And I do not say this, I'm not saying this to objectify anyone's circumstance. That there will be people who are dealing with extremely challenging circumstances, where even if somebody gets all the love that can be provided within the home, somebody gets all the affection and guidance that can be provided within the family, they still need a community to help them. There will be some people, there are many people, who don't get the love and the guidance and the affection and the assistance that is needed from within the family and the home. And again, we have an example of this in the Quran, in the Book of Allah. Eternal guidance from God. The example of Ibrahim alayhi salam. His own father discarded him. His own father threatened him. His own father said, لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ وَهْجُرْنِي مَلِيًّا. If you do not stop, I will kill you. And then he disowned him and sent him away. He was discarded by his own. He was discarded by his own. And we, day by day, are continuously becoming more and more aware of how many people are profoundly struggling. How many people are dealing with very difficult circumstances even within the confines of their own home. And how desperately they're looking for a community where they can belong to and they can be accepted. Dhul Bijadain. A young man becomes Muslim. When his family discovers that he's become Muslim, they beat him to the point where he's bloodied and bruised. They rip his clothes off his body and they throw him out of the village, naked. That you're dead to us. His mother, because a mother is a mother, she feels, she's heartbroken. So she takes a shawl and she slips it to her son. That she can't get more clothes. If they see her, they'll stop her. So she just throws him her shawl. He takes the shawl, he rips it into two pieces, wraps one around his waist to cover his privacy, and takes the other one and puts it over his shoulders to provide some kind of cover. And then he walks to Medina. When he arrives in Medina, bloodied and bruised and beaten, barely covered with two little scraps of cloth, the Prophet ﷺ sees him, embraces him, says, "Tell me your story." And he tells the Prophet ﷺ what happened to him. And the Prophet ﷺ, as a title of praise, he calls him Dhul Bijadain. His name was Abdullah. He calls him Dhul Bijadain. The man who gave up everything for what he believed in and walked away with two scraps of cloth. When this Sahabi, a couple of years later, he was still a young man. But when time has come, time has come. When he passes away, during the expedition of Tabuk, on their way back to the city of Medina, the Prophet ﷺ wakes up for the tahajjud prayer. He sees there's a fire lit on the other side of the camp. He walks over there. He finds Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma and many other companions already there. He says, "What's going on in the middle of the night?" And they say, "Ya Rasulullah, Dhul Bijadain, he passed away, he slipped away in his sleep." The Prophet ﷺ, tears streaming down his face, when they dig the grave, the Sahaba are about to get down into the grave to lower the body. The Prophet ﷺ is 62 years old at this time. 62. He says, "No." And he gets down in the grave himself. He says, "Give me the body." He cradles the body in his arms like you would hold your child. He lays him down and strokes his head. And then he comes out of the grave and he sits on the edge of the grave on his knees. He raises his arms up to the sky and he says, "Allahumma inni amsaytu anhu radin farda anhu." Oh Allah, I was pleased with him when I went to sleep last night. Oh Allah, you be pleased with him as well. Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu was so close to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the people, when they would become Muslim, they said, we naturally used to assume that Abdullah bin Mas'ud lived in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of how close they were. Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, I have never envied anyone in my entire life except for that moment, Dhul Bijadain. I would have traded places with him in a heartbeat. People need someone to provide them that love. Medina was the home for everyone who did not have a home. Medina was the family of everyone who didn't have a family. And even those who did have a home and did have a family, it was home for them as well. And that's what a community is. That's what a community provides. That's why it takes a village. Why we all have to be in it together. And this is something we can continue to talk about. I want to conclude by sharing a couple of things, a couple of basic points. Number one is that each and every single person, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about, إِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. It does not matter whether you fully realize the fact that you need to be a part of a community or not. Every single person needs a community. It is our need as believers. We need to be a part of a collective and a community. Never think of yourself above it. So when we engage in community building together, you're not providing someone to something else only. You are actually fulfilling your own need. So when you go to the community, never go with the attitude that you're doing someone else a favor. You are doing yourself a favor. You are nourishing your own soul. Be there, be grateful, be humble, be thankful that God allowed you the opportunity to be part of a community. Number two, and then if you are blessed, if you have the ability, you have the opportunity to actually contribute to the community and help to make room and provide a place for the faith, for the heart and the soul of other people, understand what an amazing blessing you've been given. It is literally following in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, because he took everyone in. The Prophet ﷺ admired the spirit of the Ansar. He said, لَوْلَا الْهِجْرَةُ لَكُنْتُ إِمْرَأً مِّنَ الْأَنصَارِ. Had it not been for the opportunity to perform migration, I would have wanted to be one of the Ansar. They opened their homes and their hearts and their arms to everyone. Be a part of the solution. Be a part of building communities, making room for people. Number three, any contribution is valuable, even the smallest contribution. And in that, we need to correct a little bit of an attitude. Sometimes we think that the only way to help people is to give them a lecture, to talk at them. And understand there's this little motto that we operate by in our own community work and what we impart to our students as well. And that is, we say, the way we phrase it is, our motto is lunches over lectures. What does that mean? Having lunch with someone has a much, much more powerful effect on someone than sitting there and giving them a lecture. Sit down with someone, break bread with someone. There are so many examples of this. There's a very famous story of one of the great scholars of the subcontinent, Shaykh Zakaria rahmatullah alayh. And I had my own little experience similar to this. In 2017, I was in Hajj, and while we were in Mina, just kind of there, this one brother walked up to me and he said, "Assalamu alaikum, Brother Abdul Nasir?" I said, "Yes." He said that, my son, I'm from Chicago, my son's name is such and such, and my son told me that you paid for his food at Usmania restaurant one time. And I told him I'm on Hajj and Brother Abdul Nasir Jangda is here. And so he said, "Oh yeah, tell him that he paid for my biryani at Usmania restaurant one time." This was a young man in that community. I was teaching a weekend seminar there. He attended the whole weekend seminar. At the end of the week, he attended the whole weekend seminar. For 20 hours, I yelled and screamed like this. And at the end of the whole weekend seminar, we went to Usmania restaurant on Devon Street in Chicago, and we all ate food, right? And he ordered biryani, and when the time came to pay the bill, this kid was about to pay for his food, and I said, no, don't worry about it, I got you. And while I paid for my food, I paid for his food as well. And he goes home and he tells his dad, what? He paid for my biryani. While that sounds like a really great thing, I was so upset at first that I yelled and screamed for 20 hours, and this kid remembered nothing from my class other than the fact that I paid for his overpriced biryani. Shots fired. Shots fired. Devon is overrated. Let him know I said it. So, but you understand the point I'm trying to make. You never know what gesture will touch someone's heart, will change someone's life. Putting an arm around someone's shoulder, asking someone how their day is going, buying someone's coffee, paying for their food, sitting with them, talking with them. You never know. Listening to them. You never know. And the next point that I wanted to make in trying to organize thoughts, because this is a very emotional subject, so I'm trying to organize the thoughts. The next point I wanted to make is that, look, this is everyone's responsibility. All of us are in this endeavor together. We all have to make this community happen. And part of that responsibility is shared by our scholars and our imams and our educators and our leaders and our mosques and our boards and our committees and our organizations. Everyone shares this responsibility. I'm just going to be very, very blunt and honest about it because I do not live in Southern California. Sheikh Noman Beg does. So I can say what I need to say, and then he can do damage control afterwards. A lot of times our organizations, and yes, even our masajid, are sometimes going to come up short. They're not going to do what they're supposed to do. They're not going to carry their own weight. I'm not criticizing any masjid. I'm just telling you what I experienced growing up. I grew up in a place where I still love that masjid profoundly. Sheikh Mikael knows the love I have for the masjid where I grew up. But I can be very honest about the fact that it didn't always provide that experience, that community, that embrace, that environment that I needed as a young man growing up. But we are all in this together. All of us share this responsibility. Do your part. If what your part is that you can just invite a couple of people over to your home to hang out, to eat some food together, to watch the game. You can invite over a few families or a few youngsters from the community to barbecue, to eat some food together, to go play ball. Whatever it is, do your part. We got to stop obsessing over doing something big and fancy and grand. Do your part. Ya Ali, la an yahdi Allahu bika rajulan wahidan. Rajulan already means one. The Prophet ﷺ, for emphasis, said even one man. Oh Ali, if you were to be able to provide guidance to even one person, khairul laka min humri na'am. That's the best investment you could ever make. And to recognize people who did good in your life, I'll mention someone that Sheikh Nu'man and Sheikh Imran, their cousin, Sayyid Amjad rahimahullah ta'ala, he was an amazing person. He's their cousin, but I grew up around him. He lived in my community, or I lived in his community. I grew up there. And he was that cool older guy that we all wanted to be like. He drove a Camaro. He rode a motorcycle. He could cross you up on the court. He went hunting and fishing. Cool guy. All while praying at the masjid, Fajr and Isha every day at the masjid, fluent in Arabic and reading Quran. And he's somebody that we all looked up to. And I remember being a kid growing up there, and it was tough. And like I said, I wasn't always getting it at the masjid. And he was someone who put an arm around our shoulder, would take us fishing, would take us camping, taught me how to shoot a basketball. You know, when I bought my first car, I was 16 years old and I got my first car. I paid for it myself. I'm Maimon, so my parents were not going to buy me a car. Those who know, they know. I bought my first car. He taught me how to maintain the car, take care of the car, told me, take me for a ride. And then he bought me a radar detector. And I went home, and when my mom saw the radar detector, she said, "Where's that? What is that?" And she said, "I know you can't afford that." And I told her, Amjad Bhai bought it for me. Then my mom called Azmat Appa, she called Amjad Bhai's mom, and she said, "Why is your son buying my son a radar detector?" And then she made me give it back to Amjad Bhai. And rahimallahu ta'ala, he passed away quite some time ago. But that's the kind of impact I'm talking about. That's the prophetic spirit. That's what we can do. Do what you can. However little, minor the impact may seem, you never know how you're changing someone's life. That was the prophetic spirit, and that was the spirit of the city of Medina. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be a unified ummah, and to be together, and to help one another, to support one another, to aid one another. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.